The text came in while I was zipping up my niece's coat. Pink puffer, the one with the little fox embroidered on the chest pocket. She'd insisted on wearing it even though it was 62 degrees outside, and her mom had laid out a lighter jacket on the kitchen counter. I remember that detail because I keep going back to it. The way her small fingers gripped the zipper pull. The way she said, "Auntie, you do it. I can't get it past the chin part." Such an ordinary Sunday afternoon thing. My phone buzzed against my hip. I almost didn't look. Then it buzzed against my hip. I almost didn't look. And again, 3 messages in 8 seconds from someone who never double texts. I pulled the phone out, expecting a client emergency. I'm a forensic accountant. People only triple text me when a quarterly audit is on fire. It was my attorney. "Pick up. Now. Do not get in the car. Whatever she told you, it's a lie. Call me." I felt my knees do that thing where they don't quite buckle, but they remember how. My niece was looking up at me with that patient little kid face, waiting for me to finish her zipper so we could go to the park. I made my hands move. I finished the zipper. I told her, "Sweetheart, can you go grab your scooter from the garage? I need to take a quick call." She trotted off. I heard the screen door click. I stood in the foyer of my older sister's house, surrounded by photographs of a family I was supposedly part of, and I called my attorney back. He picked up before the first ring finished. "Don't react," he said. "Don't change your face. Is she watching you?" She wasn't. My older sister was in the kitchen loading a tote bag with snacks for our supposed outing, humming something cheerful. My brother-in-law was upstairs. I could hear him moving around. "She's not watching," I said quietly. "Walk outside," my attorney said. "Right now. Get to your car. Lock the doors. I'm sending you a document. Open it." I went. I told my sister through the kitchen doorway that I'd forgotten something in the car. She smiled at me. That open, warm, sisterly smile she'd been giving me my entire life. I smiled back. I don't know how. Outside, the October air bit at my face. My niece was wheeling her little purple scooter in slow circles on the driveway. I told her I needed a minute, just 1 minute, sweetheart, and she said, "Okay, Auntie," in that sing-song way and went back to her circles. I got into my car. I locked the doors. I opened the email. It was a copy of a petition for emergency conservatorship, filed last Tuesday. Petitioner, my older sister. Subject, me. The allegations took up 4 pages. I was, according to the document, a 32-year-old woman suffering from undiagnosed early-onset cognitive decline. I had been observed having episodes of confusion. I had missed appointments I couldn't remember scheduling. I had been seen drinking heavily at family gatherings, including, the petition specified, at our father's memorial service 8 months ago, where I had reportedly become erratic and emotionally unstable. I had a history, the document claimed, of paranoid ideation regarding family members. I was, the petition concluded, no longer capable of managing my own financial affairs or making competent decisions regarding the substantial assets left to me by our late father. The hearing was scheduled for that Thursday, 4 days away, and I had never been served. I had no idea this existed. The supporting documents were what made me stop breathing. Screenshots of my Google Calendar showing dozens of appointments I had no memory of making. Therapy appointments. Doctor's visits for symptoms I'd never had. A canceled meeting with a real estate attorney about selling father's house under emotional duress. All from my account. All from my email address. Statements from witnesses. My sister. My brother-in-law. A neighbor I barely knew. Even a signed letter from my niece, who was 11 years old, describing how Auntie sometimes says strange things and forgets where she is. That was the one that finally made the tears come. Hot, silent, furious tears. Because I knew, looking at that childish, loopy signature, that my niece had been made to sign that. Pressured, coached, maybe lied to. My niece, who less than 30 seconds ago had asked me to do her zipper because her fingers were too small. My attorney was still on the line. "Are you reading it?" he said softly. "Yes," I said. "Don't go inside. Don't confront her. The hearing is Thursday. If you walk back into that house and lose your composure, if she gets one phone video of you yelling, that's Exhibit A. You understand?" I understood. "Where is the kid?" he said. "Driveway," I whispered. "Get her in the car with you. Tell her you forgot you have to take her for ice cream. Get her out of there. Bring her to my office." "Why?" He paused. "Because I think she's part of the evidence, and I don't think she knows it." I rolled down the window and called my niece over with a voice I would not have recognized as my own. I told her mom said it was okay if we ran an errand first. Just us. Big girls. I said it was a special grown-up surprise. She climbed in the passenger seat, buckled herself, asked if we could stop for those little donut holes on the way back. I said yes. I said yes to anything she asked. I pulled out of my older sister's driveway and watched her wave at me through the kitchen window. Still humming, probably. Still smiling. 8 blocks away, I had to pull over because my hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold the wheel. My niece looked at me with these big, serious eyes and said, "Auntie, are you sad?" I said, "No, baby. I just have an itch in my eye." She accepted that. She told me about a frog she'd seen at school. I let her talk. I drove. I want to back up. I have a sister who is 6 years older than me. Growing up, she was my hero. She braided my hair. She made me peanut butter toast cut into triangles. When our mother died of cancer when I was 9 and she was 15, she became something more than a sister. She became a mother. And I worshipped her for it. I really did. For a long time. Our father did his best after Mom died. He was a professor of environmental science at a small private university, the kind of man who wore the same 3 sweaters in rotation and could identify every bird that landed on the back porch. He never remarried. He raised us with quiet patience and a kind of bewildered love. We were his whole world. And he had a house he loved, a modest old farmhouse on 20 acres of forested land that had belonged to his grandfather. He used to walk those woods with us when we were little, pointing out lichen, naming the streams. He used to say, "This land was here long before us, and it will be here long after us, and that's the only inheritance that means anything." My older sister always heard inheritance and thought money. I always heard long after us and thought legacy. That difference would turn out to matter. My father died last February. Pancreatic cancer. 6 weeks from diagnosis to gone, there was no time for proper goodbyes. There was barely time for the hospice nurse to learn our names. The will was straightforward. The house and land were left to me. A modest investment account, roughly equal in value to the house, was left to my older sister. My father had explained this decision to both of us, separately, 2 years before his diagnosis. He had told my sister, "Your sister has always understood the land. She'll protect it. You're going to get the liquid assets because you've always preferred something you can use." It had not been a secret. It had not been a surprise. My sister had cried when she heard. She had hugged me at the funeral and said, "Of course, Daddy was right. That house is yours. It was always yours." That was 8 months ago. I should have noticed when the texts changed. They became more frequent, more casual. "Hey, just thinking of you. Want to come over for dinner this week? Niece, misses you." My sister had never been a casual texter. She had always been the kind of person who scheduled lunches 3 weeks out and confirmed twice. The sudden warmth should have been a red flag. Instead, I leaned into it. I was lonely. Our father had just died. I wanted my sister back. She started inviting me over almost every weekend, Sunday brunches, casual dinners. She'd pour me a generous glass of wine before I'd even taken my coat off. She started asking me questions like, "How are you sleeping these days? And have you been forgetting things since Dad?" I have. I'll walk into a room and just blank out. I would always say, "Yeah, a little. Grief brain, I guess." She would nod sympathetically. Sometimes she'd take notes on her phone afterward. I noticed it once and asked. She laughed and said she was just texting her husband about dinner at my father's memorial service 8 months ago, the one cited in the petition. My older sister had handed me a glass of white wine. I had been wearing the cream-colored dress my father had loved. The one he'd told me made me look like our mother. My sister had held the glass out to me, and as I'd reached for it, she had tripped. The wine had gone down the front of my dress in a wide, ugly stain. I had gasped. People had turned to look. My sister had loudly, theatrically apologized, saying, "Oh, honey, oh, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? You seemed a little unsteady. Did I bump you?" And then, lower, to a cousin standing nearby, "I'm worried about her. She's having a really hard time." I had not been unsteady. I had been still as a statue. She had walked into me deliberately. I remember that now. I didn't remember it then. I had been so deep in grief that my sister's narrative just slid over the top of my reality and replaced it. I went home that night thinking I must have been more out of it than I realized. I added it to my growing list of grief symptoms to monitor. In the petition, the wine incident appeared as subject was observed visibly intoxicated at father's memorial service. Subject became disoriented, stained own clothing, was unable to recall the incident accurately afterward. Multiple witnesses can confirm. That was the moment, sitting in my car 8 blocks from my sister's house with my niece chattering about frogs in the passenger seat, that I understood. This had been going on for 8 months, maybe longer. My attorney's office was in a quiet little brick building near the courthouse. He had taken on my father's estate planning a decade ago, and when our father died, he had walked me through probate with the patience of a saint. He was in his 60s. He had a daughter my age. He had told me once that he thought of clients like family, and I had laughed at the time, thinking it was just a thing lawyers said. I was no longer laughing. I parked. I told my niece we were going to visit a friend of Grandpa's, and she could have a juice box from the office fridge. She accepted this. She skipped beside me into the lobby. My attorney met us at the door. He had set up a coloring station for her in the corner of the conference room. Crayons, construction paper, a box of Cheez-Its. He'd had his paralegal make a kid-friendly waiting area, knowing I was coming. He'd known. He had thought ahead. His paralegal sat with my niece in the corner, asking her about school. My attorney took me into his private office and closed the door. "Tell me everything," he said. "Start with how you found out about any of this." I hadn't. He had. He told me how. 2 weeks earlier, a paralegal at a different firm had called him. She was a friend from law school. She had been doing intake on a new client, my older sister, and she'd recognized my last name. She'd asked, casually, "Is that the daughter of the professor who died last winter?" And my sister, not knowing the paralegal had any connection to anyone, had said yes and started explaining, with what the paralegal later described as eerie composure, that her younger sister was unwell and needed to be removed from control of significant family assets before she did something irreversible. The paralegal had nodded, taken notes, and the moment my sister left, she had called my attorney. He had been quietly investigating since. What he had found was worse than the petition. My sister and her husband had been making moves, real moves. They had, 3 weeks before, met with a developer, a man who specialized in buying up rural acreage in our county and dividing it into McMansion lots. They had shown the developer a preliminary purchase agreement for my father's land, my land, at a price of just under $4 million. They had told him probate was nearly finalized, and they expected to be able to transfer title within 90 days. They had taken a good faith deposit of $200,000. Cash. That cash had gone into a joint account my brother-in-law had opened in March. 1 month after my father died, before the funeral flowers had wilted. The land they were selling was not theirs. It was mine. And they knew it. They can't actually transfer the title, I said. They know that. They're not planning to transfer it as themselves, my attorney said. They're planning to transfer it as your conservator. He let that sink in. If the emergency conservatorship was granted on Thursday, my older sister would have legal authority over all of my assets. She would have the right to sell property in my best interest. She would be required to deposit the proceeds in a conservatorship account. Technically, but my attorney explained gently, that conservatorship accounts are not policed in real time. By the time anyone audited it, the money could be moved a dozen times. And the developer's deposit, that $200,000, my attorney had found it. It had already been partially spent. A new car, a down payment on a vacation property in another state, a series of consulting fees paid to my brother-in-law from a shell company that did not appear to perform any services. They had been spending money that didn't belong to them, counting on a conservatorship that didn't exist yet, betting everything on Thursday. I sat in his office and felt something turn very cold inside my chest. "What about my niece?" I said. He sighed. The letter from my niece, he explained, was the weakest link in their case. Children cannot give legal affidavits. The document had been included as a family member statement of concern, which had no legal weight but had been intended to add emotional texture for the judge. But more importantly, it raised questions. Why would my sister have her own child sign a document against her aunt? What did she tell that child? What did she tell that child witness? "She's 11, I said. My voice cracked. "She told me her fingers were too small for the zipper." He nodded gently. "We're going to handle this," he said. "Not just for you, for her too." I went home that night with my niece. I called my sister and told her I'd taken my niece for ice cream and a movie on a whim, that we were having so much fun I wanted to do a sleepover. Was that okay? My sister, on the other end of the line, paused for a beat too long before saying, "Of course, sweetie. That's so generous. She'll love that." I made up the guest bed. I read her Charlotte's Web until she fell asleep. I sat in the dark of my living room for hours afterward and did not cry. I did something else. I made a list. The next morning, while my niece ate pancakes, I asked her, carefully, lightly, if her mom had ever asked her to sign anything for her. She nodded immediately. She said it was for school, she said, mouth full of syrup. She said it was to help Auntie get better medicine. My hand froze around the coffee mug. Better medicine, I repeated. Yeah. Mommy said you have a kind of sickness in your brain like Grandma did, and that's why you forget things. She said if I signed the paper, it would help the doctors give you the right medicine. She paused, looked up. Are you sick, Auntie? I said no, baby. I said I was not sick at all. I said Mommy was confused about something, and we were going to help Mommy be less confused about something, and we were going to help Mommy be less confused. I said it in my mother voice, the one I had borrowed from my mother, who had borrowed it from her mother. I said it like it was the simplest truth in the world. My niece nodded. Okay, and then, can we have more syrup? I gave her more syrup. I put a recording app on my phone and asked her to tell me again, slower, what her mommy had said about the paper. She did. She told me everything. The conversation Mommy had had with her at the kitchen table while Daddy was at the store. The promise of a new doll if she signed her name nice and neat. The instruction to keep it a secret from Auntie because Auntie's brain wasn't strong enough to hear about it yet. That recording was going to matter. My attorney and I spent the next 3 days building. I will not bore you with the specifics of legal strategy, but I will say this. When you are a forensic accountant and the people trying to destroy you have committed financial fraud as part of their plan, you have a particular and useful set of skills. I traced the developer's deposit, every dollar. I traced the shell company my brother-in-law had set up. I found 2 more deposits from 2 other parties, a vineyard owner who'd been interested in the land for grapes, and a small church that had wanted to buy a corner of the property for a retreat center. 3 buyers, 3 deposits, almost $500,000 in cash that had been collected against property that was mine. My attorney filed an emergency motion to dismiss the conservatorship petition based on procedural fraud. He attached 140 pages of evidence, bank records, email forensics. Because my brother-in-law, it turned out, had been logging into my Google account from his home IP address for nearly a year, and Google logs everything. Notarized statements from the developer, the vineyard owner, and the pastor of the small church, all of whom had been told by my sister and her husband that they had authority to sell. And the audio recording. My niece's small voice describing what her mother had asked her to do. The hearing on Thursday did not go the way my sister had planned. She showed up in a soft gray cardigan. She had her hair in a low bun. She had a tissue tucked into her sleeve. She had practiced the trembling lower lip. She had her husband at her side and her lawyer at her other side. She did not have her daughter because I had asked her, through my attorney, very politely, if she would please leave her daughter out of court proceedings, and she had agreed because to refuse would have looked terrible. She did not know I had spent 4 days quietly building. The judge, a woman in her late 50s with reading glasses pushed up on her head, took the file my attorney handed her. She took 20 minutes to flip through it while everyone sat in silence. I watched my sister's face during those 20 minutes. I watched it shift from confident to puzzled to alarmed to, finally, a kind of frozen blankness. The judge looked up. She did not dismiss the petition. She did something better. She referred it to the district attorney's office for investigation as a potential criminal matter. She granted me an emergency restraining order against my sister and her husband. She ordered the immediate freezing of every account my sister and her husband held jointly or separately pending investigation. And then, almost as an afterthought, she looked over her reading glasses at my sister and said, "Ma'am, whatever you did to involve your 11-year-old in this, that's the part I find truly disturbing. I'm sending a copy of the recorded statement to Child Protective Services as a matter of routine. You'll be hearing from them." My sister did not cry. She did not protest. She made a small sound in her throat and sat down very heavily in her chair. I want to tell you the rest happened fast, but it didn't. It happened over months. The DA's office moved slowly. The investigation was thorough. My brother-in-law was charged first. Wire fraud, attempted fraud, identity theft for the email access, My older sister was charged a few weeks later. Conspiracy, filing a false petition, suborning perjury. In the case of the witnesses she had coached, the neighbor recanted within a day of being interviewed. My sister had paid her $3,000 to sign that statement. The buyers got their deposits back. The developer was furious. The vineyard owner was philosophical. The pastor wrote me a kind letter saying he would pray for my family. My brother-in-law took a plea. 4 years. My sister did not take a plea. She went to trial. She lost. 6 years. While she was awaiting trial, free on bond, her daughter, my niece, came to live with me. There was no fight about it. Child Protective Services had already opened a file. My sister's husband was in custody. There was nowhere else for her to go that the state considered safe. My sister signed temporary guardianship over to me in a small office downtown, wearing the same gray cardigan. She did not look at me. She signed the papers and walked out. I made my niece a bedroom. I painted it pale yellow because she asked for the color of pancakes. I bought her a small white desk. I learned how to braid hair, badly, then less badly. I learned what kind of lunch she liked in her thermos. I learned that she liked to sleep with the closet light on and the door cracked exactly 2 inches. I learned 100 small things about a small person who had, until very recently, been used as a weapon against me by her own mother. She asked about her mom sometimes. I never lied. I told her, in age-appropriate language, that her mom had made some choices that broke the law, and that there were consequences for those choices, and that none of it was her fault. I told her her mom loved her. I believe that's even true, in whatever twisted way my sister was capable of love. The land, my father's land, I put it into a conservation easement. Permanently, legally untouchable. It can never be developed. The forest he walked us through as children will stand for our children and our children's children long after I am gone, long after my sister is gone, long after the name of the developer who wanted to slice it into mini mansions has been forgotten. My father would have liked that. My niece is 12 now. She calls me auntie still, but sometimes she slips and calls me mom, and then gets embarrassed and corrects herself. I tell her both are fine. I tell her she can call me whatever feels right. She asked me recently if I forgave her mom. I thought about it for a long time before I answered. I did not want to lie to her, and I did not want to give her something that would harden in her like a stone. I told her I did not forgive what her mom had done, but I told her I was free of it, which is not the same thing as forgiveness, and which is, I think, better. I told her that her mom would always be her mom, and that nothing her mom had done changed who she was. I told her she was good. I told her she was loved. She thought about that for a while. Then she asked if we could have grilled cheese for dinner. We had grilled cheese for dinner. There is a photograph on my refrigerator now. My father, my niece, and me, taken the summer before my father died. We are all sitting on the back porch of the farmhouse. My father has his arm around my niece. She is showing him something. A leaf maybe, or a stone, and he is looking at it with the kind of full attention he gave to everything that mattered. I am laughing at something off camera. I look at that photograph every morning while my coffee brews. I think sometimes about what my older sister wanted. She wanted $4 million. She wanted a vacation home and a new car and the freedom from whatever shame she carried about not having been our father's favorite, about not having understood the land the way I did, about being, in her own private accounting, second place. She traded her daughter for that. She traded her sister. She traded her freedom and her name and her future for that. And in the end, she got none of it. I got the land. I got the girl. I got a quiet, ordinary, hard-won life with a child who deserves so much better than she was given, and who, I have promised myself, will get every good thing I have the power to give her. The text message came in while I was zipping up her coat. It was the worst day of my life. And also, looking back, the day everything turned. I've thought a lot about cause and effect since that Sunday. Not in any mystical sense. Just the plain, stubborn arithmetic of choices. Every move my older sister made started somewhere small. A glass of wine tipped a little too deliberately. A note jotted on her phone after I admitted I'd been forgetting things. A Google login from her husband's IP address that I never thought to check for. None of those, on their own, look like the beginning of a crime. But choices compound. They build on each other. And by the time you can see the shape of what someone has been doing, the shape is already huge. That's the thing nobody tells you about betrayal inside a family. It doesn't arrive. It accumulates. It is built slowly out of moments you didn't recognize as moments. My sister did not wake up one morning and decide to steal $4 million and a child's honesty in one stroke. She drifted there. She made one small dishonest choice, and then she made another one to cover it, and then another. And by the time my attorney called me, she was so deep inside her own scheme that she could smile at me through her kitchen window and feel nothing. I think about Lila, my niece, 11 years old, signing her name on a paper she'd been told would help me get better medicine. She did not know she was being used. She was being a good daughter. That's the part that still makes my chest tighten when I let myself think about it. Children are not strategic. They love who they are told to love, and they trust who they are told to trust. Margot weaponized that, and the cost of doing that, the slow, quiet damage to her own daughter, was a price she was willing to pay without ever sitting down and actually adding it up. What saved me wasn't luck. It wasn't even my attorney. Though Bennett carried me through the worst week of my life with a steadiness I will always be grateful for. What saved me was the part of myself that had been built quietly over years into something my sister did not know how to account for. The discipline of my profession, the habit of keeping records, the instinct drilled into me by my father of taking the long view on things that mattered. My sister had been planning for months. I had been becoming for 32 years. She underestimated the difference. If there is anything I would say to anyone listening, it is this. Build yourself in quiet ways. Be honest in small things, because small honesty becomes the foundation under your feet when someone tries to push you off a cliff. Be patient. Be careful with the people you love, but be clear-eyed about them too. Love is not the same as trust, and trust is not the same as access. Some of the people closest to you should not have your passwords. Some of them should not have your silence. And if a moment comes when everything you thought you knew tilts sideways, stay in your chair. Stay quiet. Get help. Build, because the people who try to destroy you are almost always rushing, and the people who survive them are almost always the ones who took their time.